Hello, this is Justin Mitchell, and today I'll be speaking on PS408 Week 4. This will be a case study briefing report, and the case study goes as follows. For this assignment, you are to choose from a successful insurgency. You may use cases in your text or use a case from outside the text. It's your choice. However, in the book Counterinsurgency Warfare, the following prerequisites exist in term of the cause powering a successful insurgency. A necessity of a cause, strategic criteria of a cause, the nature of a cause, and tactical manipulation of the cause. And then I'm to break down this successful insurgency and tell how each one of those prerequisites is met and why it's successful in my opinion. Okay, so I went with a very well-known insurgency. That would be one of the most successful to this day, and that would be the Taliban. In order for the Taliban to be successful, they needed quite a number of things, and it almost seemed as if they had exactly what they needed to rise to power. First off, the Taliban needed a necessity of a cause. So what was the necessity of the cause? Well, we have to look at a brief overview of Afghanistan's history, as in from 1979 to 89. That was during the Soviet occupation, and the Afghans, who are potentially ethnically or tribally based, there was a lot of sectarian violence in the area. Well, when the Soviets came, that was one of the times where they had a common enemy. So all these groups, they were able to come together and fight the enemy. However, as you can imagine, what would happen after the enemy was defeated or left? Well, in 1992, the Mujahideen, the freedom fighters in Afghanistan, they came into power in 1992, like I said, and the Afghan people thought there would be so much peace in the area, that the Soviets were gone and everything like that. However, with the Mujahideen, like, no one party or person allowed the others to just take power. Like, everybody wanted to, they were all vying for power. So because you were vying for power, a lot of sectarian violence ensued, civil wars ensued, and a lot of sectarian violence. And like I said, and the thing about it is, the civilians were, just like in almost any war, the civilians are usually the ones who pay the price. And it was just at this point that civilians were constantly getting killed, and the Taliban, which stands for religious students, well, students, but religious students, they wanted to rise against all the sectarian violence, all the senseless killings, and they wanted to alleviate the sufferings of the residents of, especially the Kabul province. That's where they, no, excuse me, not the Kabul, the Kandahar province. That's where they started. So they wanted to help the civilians, and this became a necessity of a cause. They had a necessity of a cause then. So what about after they had the cause? What about after they took control of Kabul and anything like that nature? So you have to think, they had the necessity. So what do we have next is the strategic criteria of the cause. So in Afghanistan, excuse me, over 99%, well, excuse me, 99% of the people are Muslim. So if you can appeal to the Muslim population, you've appealed to the whole country. So they wanted to not only stop the sectarian violence, but they wanted to impose their own law and their own version of Sharia, which is Islamic law, onto the people, and they wanted to have their authoritarian rule in Afghanistan. So they went to using Sharia law. They used Islamic law to try and garner the support of 99% of the Muslims. Also, that they felt that they were being abused under a communist government before when the Soviets were there, and then right now, like, they see the civilians constantly getting caught in the crossfire, so they wanted to push to the civilians, and they wanted to return morals to the society, return morals and use Sharia law to return that to the society, and they now have strategic criteria with their cause, but they needed two more things, and that would be to define the nature of the problem and to tactically manipulate the cause. So what was the exact problem in Afghanistan? I'm sorry, I laugh because Afghanistan was riddled with problems during that time. It's riddled with problems to this day. However, during that time, one of the things was, it was almost an ideal situation for the Taliban because the civilians, they were getting distress from very different amount of sources, and the civilians at this point, a lot of them being uneducated, a lot of them being poor, a lot of them being almost helpless because potentially the breadwinners in their family were killed in sectarian violence and things of this nature. They had nowhere to go. So if the Taliban would seem like the quote-unquote knights in shining armor, where they could come and take them away from all of this bloodshed. So, and the Taliban also felt that there was a religious problem in the country, and that was one of the main reasons why they imposed their perversion of Sharia law onto the populace. However, the nature of the problems, again, was the civilians had so much issues, and now that the Soviets left, like, everybody was power hungry and everybody was dying, and there was a void of religious religious significance as from what they saw in the culture. So finally, the last thing was they needed to tactically manipulate the cause to appeal to the populace. So the Taliban insurgency, they did an us versus them mentality, in a sense where they were talking about them being the feuding warlords and the people who were constantly being killed and having their land destroyed and basically suffering under these warlords. They saw it as an us versus them. If you join us, the Taliban would say, if you join us, we can help you defeat them. And so that helped the civilians, or that appeal to the civilians to be like, okay, we can escape the situation. And a very tactfully way the Taliban also recruited members was not necessarily the warlords would be the ones destroying and doing the destruction. Well, the Taliban could kill individuals and they could slaughter animals, they could destroy land, and then they would come they can do that at night, and then the next day they would come and be like, okay, well, this happened. If you're with us, we'll make sure that this never happens again. So creating an environment of fear and terror to recruit members, that was one of their ways for tactically manipulating the populace into joining them. And also, they wanted a final call for all Muslims to live under Islamic law. And with these three things, you can see that the populace was being manipulated by having their people killed by warlords, being tricked by the Taliban, and finally, because they were Muslim, you know, garnering support under the name of Muslim. So again, we'll conclude by looking up everything. And first, again, excuse me, that was the necessity of the cause. After the Soviet occupation, there was just no central government and the people were suffering. The strategic criteria, the Taliban not only wanted to impose their own Sharia law, they wanted to, not only wanted to help the people, they wanted to impose their Sharia law, and they wanted to be the head of the government. Third thing was the, excuse me, the third thing was the nature of the problem. The nature of the problem, again, was that the people were suffering and that they wanted to help them and put their version of Sharia law, kind of like the strategic